So welcome everybody to the Martin E. Siegel Theater Center here at the Graduate Center CUNY, and we would like to welcome tonight a special guest, and we have the highest admiration for, and even so it is much more known in the visual arts, in the experimental music scene, in the performance scene. It's not enough, as a topic of a discussion, I think, in the theater of the performance world. We have with us tonight poet and founder of UbuWeb, Kenneth Goldsmith. We named the talk, "If We Had to Ask Permission, We Wouldn't Exist. A Brief History of UbuWeb, 1996 to present." It's a true adventure and expedition of the 21st century, I think. It's, I think, also leading the way into the future, and I think he is, in the sense of the avant-garde, part of the avant-garde, and I would really like to know much, much more about him and his work, and Kenneth did agree to come and talk to us and give us an idea of his creation, his world, and his universe. He's going to talk to us or give a presentation about 20, 30 minutes. Afterwards, I will sit down with him and ask some questions, then we will open it up to the audience. My name is Frank Henschke. I'm the Director of Programs and the Executive Director of the Siegel Theater Center. Our center bridges academia and professional theater, international, and American theater and performance. So again, thank you all for coming. And Kenneth.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Frank. It's good to be here, and thank you all for coming tonight. It's funny. I think it was Nam June Paik that said, "The internet is for everyone that doesn't live in New York City." And I think that's right. I mean, we have an intimate crowd here tonight, and when I give this kind of talk elsewhere, it's always very, very full. And I think that, which is fine, because we don't need this here. We have so much else, and it isn't. People in New York, I mean, I live here as well. People in New York have a very different sense of the internet than people elsewhere do. I mean, we are your city is the lifeline, and for a lot of people, the internet is the lifeline for them. And I actually find that much of UbuWeb's audience are people really, really far away from this type of culture. In New York, we have this type of culture here. Every night you want to see somebody fantastic, they're always at this theater. We go to Audiovisual Arts on First Street and listen to incredible things, or around the corner at the Anthology Archive, or MoMA, or IFC. It goes on, and all the incredible theater. So in a weird way, I kind of got more into the internet. I've always been working and interested in the internet since its inception, but since I had kids 13 years ago, I sort of became a shut-in, as one tends to do with kids. And I began to live, I live just 5 blocks from here, but I began to live like somebody that lives in Iowa City, say. And suddenly for me, who I just couldn't get out, the internet became even more important. So that's sort of a preface to talk a little bit about the type of community that I imagine uses this website, actually that I don't really even imagine that I know uses this website. It happens to be people that are outside of urban areas, people who are often don't have the income to have the privilege of attending things that we take for granted here in New York. To get to New York, costs a lot of money. Hotels cost a lot of money, and museums, even MoMA, is $20. So this is not possible for most people. And for most people, they don't have an anthology that plays Stan Brakhage films. If you miss them this week, they'll be back in 2 weeks from then. So the internet and a place like UbuWeb becomes a sort of a lifeline. Certainly, bookstores aren't what they, libraries never had the kind of material that we offer, and bookstores as well. Barnes & Noble don't carry books on avant-garde theater or poetry or art. So that is all to say that I appreciate you being here. A lot of UbuWeb is criticized for being a facsimile of the real thing, right? People often say, you know, it's great, but it's like looking at a photograph of a painting. And in a way, that's right. You know, in a way, that's right. But for most people, again, that don't have access to this stuff, that the facsimile becomes the real thing for most people. So suddenly, this is real. For those of you, I guess I'll just give a quick history and a quick tour, right? It's odd for me to think that this site has been now going for 17 years. It is the largest site that delivers avant-garde material on the internet, and the reason it does it is that it ignores copyright. You go, copyright? What's that? Never heard of it. And this is why it's possible to have thousands and thousands and thousands of artifacts on the site. This is just the film and video alone, right? And I mean, you know, so if you go to somebody, you know, I don't know, how about Jack Smith, who only made 3 films? There they all are, each in its you know, in its glory, both streaming. And the other thing about it is that if you look over here, you'll see that there's always a download to an AVI. I don't believe in cloud computing. I think you have to be able to download things. You know, you know, I travel all the time, and most of the time I can't find a free Wi-Fi signal. You know, I have to go to a Starbucks. And so, you know, everybody believes in this idea of the cloud. I don't. It's great to stream stuff, but it's much better to be able to download stuff. Also, things are not going to be there forever. And the fact that this site, as illegal as it is, has managed to remain up for all these years is just absolutely ridiculous. This could have disappeared tomorrow. I could get bored. I could get sued. You know, why should I do this? I mean, there's no money. I don't touch money, which is one of the reasons I'm able to do this, I think. And our bandwidth is delivered by academic servers in Mexico City now. We kind of, you know, over the years, we get booted around a little bit to anybody that will give us the bandwidth. And now we're in Mexico City, and they're very, Centro is the name of the art school there. They're extremely generous with their bandwidth. And it's, believe me, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to stream all this stuff. So that's the film and video. But UbuWeb really sort of begins in 1996 with things like this, little concrete poems. This is a concrete poem by Eugen Graminger, who is a Swiss concrete poet and also a graphic designer. And he began, like so many people in the mid-century, writing these funny little poems that were really modernist, that were really flat, that were universally understandable, and in a weird way kind of anticipated our digital culture in so many ways. And I got into this stuff, concrete and visual poetry. I'll show you another one. I mean, there's nothing about these that you can't understand, and I just think they're so delightful. You know, really, right, bang, quick, you know, like the way the internet moves, right? Who doesn't understand wind? They're beautiful, and you know, they are, again, transnational. They're really not meant to be read. They're meant to be looked at, and people say, you know, this is very bad visual art, but in fact, it's very good poetry. It's probably not good visual art, but it's extremely good and interesting modernist poetry. As time went on, and I was starting to collect these little books. This is just a crappy little scan. You can also see how small it is. Back in the day when I started, the screens were 640 by 480, and so that used to fill up a screen. And I kind of love the way that it now just kind of floats on a page, and you know, nobody looks at it. You know, it's really ignored and unloved. But the site still really is based in visual and concrete poetry, which I adore. And actually, I'll show you a new section. Some 16 years later, I just dedicated a whole new section to visual and concrete poetry, which I can get to. But what happens here is that I get so into this stuff that when sound comes in, and sometimes sound comes in and around, Netscape is 95, and then real audio sort of starts to happen around 97, 98, and I began to put up sound poetry, right? You know, so like Kurt Schwitter's, you know, yeah, maybe I have yeah, here it is. Here's an, you know, I mean, just a you know, simple, you know.
Die Sonate in Urlauten. 5 BWTCU Vergif Quie.
So that's sound poetry. That's Kurt Schwitter's, actually recorded by his son, evidently. I've always thought it was Kurt Schwitter's himself. But as it turns out, it's a favorite, you know, the sonata, the sound poetry of the 20th century. And we have about 8 or 9 versions of it, from computers doing it to rock and roll bands doing it to Japanese guys screaming it. And, you know, it's kind of totally elastic. So it's great. So you have Schwitter's. But then I came to this really weird point where I ran into Cage and the problem with John Cage. And Cage made these beautiful mesostics, these beautiful visual poems, which I have up on the site. I don't know if I've got them, probably not here. But if I go to the historical section, and I'll just show you this very, very quickly. These beautiful mesostics. These are Cage's mesostics from the late 70s. Things like this, you know, which were not only poems, but they were also scores and graphical pieces. And to make matters worse, Cage would read these things, and they're very, very beautiful to listen to him read. All the fonts were chosen by chance-determined operations, and it's really, really beautiful stuff. But I got a little bit like, wait a minute, this is not really concrete poetry, this is not really visual poetry, this is not really sound poetry, this is something else. And to make matters even more complicated, Cage would often read these things with an orchestra or accompanied by piano. And it was absolutely baffling what he did. So I hit this weird moment with this thing, probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years into it, where I just decided that the only thing that this could possibly be was something called avant-garde. Right? I don't know. And at the time, you weren't allowed to use the term avant-garde. You know, that was patriarchal. Postmodernism, you were never allowed to use that word, avant-garde. I mean, it had all these horrible connotations, but there was something about Cage, and there was something about the utopianism of the web that really made me feel that the word avant-garde began to make sense again. And so from there, I just began to build this massive archive of the avant-garde. And when real audio went away and MP3s came in, we began building up the sound section, which is, I think, the largest part to date here. And this just goes on and on and on. Everyone from Duchamp to Dubuffet. This is fantastic stuff. I bet you didn't know that Jean Dubuffet was a musique concrète person, or you know, he just made very weird. And the thing that I really love now is that because UbuWeb's been around for so long, a lot of people say, gee, I love that musician, Jean Dubuffet. And then I find out he's also a painter, right? And so what Ubu has done, because it's been so insistent and because it's been around for so long, and because it's the only thing of its type, is it's been turning, you know, oeuvres on their head. You know, many people, really it's not common knowledge, but a lot of people think this is a great musician who also made some pretty cool paintings. You know, so I love when those kind of things happen. So anyway, so getting back to the sound page. So it went on and on and on. My goodness, there's Bob Dylan. Look at this. This is fantastic. This is a funny little phone call that Bob Dylan made to A.J. Weberman, who was a trash collector of the avant-garde. He was a famous garbologist, and he'd go through people's trash, and he'd pick things up, and Dylan got pissed at him, and let's see if we can hear a little.
Tape. What tape? You called Naomi?
Yeah. all about some tape. What tape was that?
No, I didn't take any tape. What I did was I typed out my recollections of our conversation together. And I'm going to use it as an interview. I'm going to send it out to every underground paper in America for free, rather than selling it to...
You didn't tell me that was any interview.
Oh, well, didn't you like... didn't you...
Hey, man, you want to have an interview with me? Let me know. I'll give you an interview. Don't take...
Okay, fine. But I was going to let you see it beforehand.
Anyway, I mean, he's just tormenting Bob Dylan of, going to take his trash and publish it as interviews. I mean, it's just kind of fantastic, but it does play into the whole weird idea of the avant-garde, like what is avant-garde? What is Bob Dylan doing on UbuWeb? Also, what is somebody like, well, gee, where is it now? What's his name? Oh yeah, John Lennon. Right, and so these are John Lennon pieces that he published with Aspen magazine in the '60s, and really, this is the furthest thing from "I Am the Walrus." It's just him twiddling a radio for 15 minutes or something. I mean, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. And it just goes on and on. But I just love the idea that, we have the most, the person that's worth more money than anybody on UbuWeb, And actually, we did get a cease and desist from Yoko Ono's people for her films, right? Which, fair enough, she really doesn't want them out. And when I get cease and desist, which happens quite frequently, I try to go back a little bit and I say, listen, we don't, there's no money here. This is, we're just, it's a big fan site. And I say, can we keep at least the sound work of Ono and Lennon up on UbuWeb? Because it's part of a historical thing that's called Aspen Magazine, which this is the British issue that it came from. This is a guy that went and actually digitized these beautiful avant-garde magazines from the 60s. They used to come in like little boxes that typing paper came in, and they would have essays. This one has really the first bit of Crash ever published. And they come in little bits and pieces of paper. This is the Lennon diary, which is really kind of funny. This is just a little diary that he did, and he just went throughout the entire year and wrote things like, got up, watched telly, came home, went to bed. And this is the entire thing that John Lennon did. Got up, went to work, came home, watched telly, went to bed. And he did this entire thing for the entire year. I mean, it's just really, really very beautiful. So anyway, I said to the lawyers, and lawyers, they get very feisty. You get a DMCA takedown notice, but it's a lot of hot air. And I say, listen, can we just keep up the Lennon and the Ono? Can we keep up the Lennon and the Ono stuff that's part of Aspen Magazine, because it's really historical, it's really important, and we're not making any money. They used to come on these funny flexi discs. These are you can't see it here, but they used to come on the back of cereal boxes, and you put them on a record player, and they'd play. And I said, look, these are really important. They're part of this thing here. And he said, okay, let me ask Yoko. And he asked Yoko. He came back the next day. She said, take down the films, but you can leave the audio up. So actually, bang, that's a victory, right? See, again, if we had to ask permission, this thing wouldn't exist. If I actually had to go to Yoko Ono's people, I mean, they wouldn't even answer me, And so suddenly, because it's there and because we're okay, they go, finally, in the end of the day, it's cool, you can keep it there. And so we acquired this really crazy collection of stuff. I was a DJ at WFMU for many years, and through our WFMU connections, we ended up putting this crazy project called the 365 Days Project up. And as you can see, everybody would contribute an MP3 per day. This was back in 2003, and then they did it again in 2007. And it was weird stuff: celebrity children, industrial outsider, spoken ventriloquism stuff, all this kind of, so if you go to somewhere here, you know, God, a Stag Party record, you know, featuring wild party songs. And again, this is all under the kind of like the strange idea of with a Winnipeg whore. What is?
Hey, what's happening over there, huh? My first trip up the Chippewa River.
Okay, that's not avant-garde, right? But you know, but somehow we've got an outsider section because a lot of the graphical notation that outsiders were using looked a lot like concrete poetry, and a lot of the kind of weird tunings that outsiders are using felt like Harry Partch or other avant-garde stuff. And but we had this really strange thing happen here. If I can find it here, we had this this really strange piece here by somebody named Nicholas Slonimsky, who sings these ads about constipation. And if I can just find this for a second, I'll play it for you. This is just a super short excerpt. It's just a minute long.
Go on.
Children cry for Castoria. Yes, they cry for Castoria. Mother, relieve your constipated child. Hurry, mother, even a fretful, bilious, feverish child loves the pleasant taste of Castoria, 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 oh gentle, harmless laxative, which never fails to sweeten the stomach and open the bowels. It never cramps nor overacts. Ask your druggist for genuine Castoria. All the instructions are printed in the bottle. Children cry for Castoria.
So some guy's screaming out about children and constipated bowels. It's actually it's a pop gesture where he's actually reading an advertisement and setting it to music, but he can't sing, and it's really weird shit. And then I realized that this is the same guy that has this very serious section on UbuWeb and UbuWeb sound, and it turns out that he was the first person to conduct things like Varèse's ionization. This is actually the very first recording ever made in the 30s of that. Just listen to this. And it turns out that Slonimsky was the most ultra-modernist radical conductor of his time. And he was so radical and so uncompromising that he was actually drummed out of concert halls. I mean, they finally said, "We don't want your noise anymore," you know. And he became a wonderful musicologist, wrote the Baker's Dictionary, and a really hugely interesting guy. So you have this like one side of this guy that's a complete nutty outsider, and you have this other side that's this total high, uncompromising modernist. And to me, this is sort of where things really get interesting in UbuWeb, is where things start to collapse like that, you know. And that, to me, is kind of like a very unorthodox take on you know, kind of what avant-garde is. There's a couple of moments in Ubu that I love so much. And then Frank, maybe we'll chat because it's. I mean, I could. You know, this site is huge. You could go on forever. But I love this. I love this pairing right here. That's Samuel Beckett and Captain Beefheart. You know, and of course we have a ton of Beckett works up here, Beckett films and stuff like that. There's a bunch of them. Actually, I for many, many years, I had Samuel Beckett's film with Buster Keaton up that was unavailable elsewhere, but I got a wonderful email, and these are the kind of emails that I love to get, is that, in fact, Beckett's film was going back into print, and could we take it down? I said, gladly. Because all of this stuff is out of print and really unavailable. I don't put things up that are in print. Not on purpose. Sometimes it happens, but then, and when something goes back into print, I take it down because I don't want to deprive small record labels of believe me, they're not making any money on that. So that was great. But the idea, and this to me is so thrilling, the Beefheart is a little sort of documentary film about him. But the idea that you never hear the word Samuel Beckett and Captain Beefheart in the same sentence. Now, to me, it makes perfect sense, It's hard to imagine Beefheart existing without Samuel Beckett. But UbuWeb is kind of like my ideal of an art world. If I had to make an art world, which I have here, it would include Samuel Beckett and Captain Beefheart completely. You know Don Van Vliet, the great abstract expressionist painter that shows in very fancy galleries uptown, or the Frank Zappa cohort, but you don't know, when these things start to crash together. To me, is where this whole thing, it's kind of a new idea of the avant-garde. So, Frank, I think I've gone for about a half hour. Maybe we should chat a little bit. How does that sound? Okay.
First of all, thank you so much.
Okay, there's so much more to say, but thanks.
Yes, I think I would like to point it out as someone here at the university where we run one or two or three websites, and sometimes just changing a website to an updating program is a challenge in itself.
It's not a challenge.
Yeah, for us, but
it's ridiculous.
So we just want to say what an incredible vision and idea you had, but also that you made it happen. And
but you can't. You can't do what I do. See, I teach. I have my day job is I teach at a university, and at the university you can just throw it on the floor. Yeah, it's fine. At the university, I run what's the legitimate side of UbuWeb, which is a site called Pen Sound, which is all poetry. And now everything on Pen Sound must be permissioned. Everything must be signed off. All of this stuff. I mean, or I write books. I write, books that get published with real publishers, but I've got to pay permissions. And I do. A lot of my life is spent above board doing things right. And then there's this whole other side that's really shadowy and risky in this way. Now, I know it's impossible to do anything, but really, I mean, I've kind of built this entire thing myself. I put the kids to bed, get a big glass of whiskey, hammer away. It's like gardening, and I do it because I can. I'm sorry, but you didn't even get to a question. I'm interrupting you already.
Not at all. Go on. Quiet. So you have your glass of wine and then?
A bourbon, yeah. I get drunk and I write HTML. It's all done by hand. It's HTML 1.0. I haven't learned a new program since 1996. Really? There's no back end. People are always, over the years, we have a great database program for you. We'd love to give you, put you into a database. I'm so glad that it's not locked up in some SQL database. And this is a problem. I mean, people get hooked into technologies, and of course people that have no money take volunteer work, and system admins notoriously disappear with the keys. And this has happened so often. So there's something about Ubu that I think is really important, that it's HTML 1.0. There's nothing fancy. We're doing nothing. It does what it does really well. There's no sign up. There's no advertising. I'd close it. I'd kill it before there was advertising. No donation boxes, thank you. No comment stream. There's no community. I mean, fuck you. Like you're gonna. You don't have any input here. People complain sometimes. They say, "Great, I'll send your money back." I mean, really, it's. And people say, that, and that's the reason the site's so good, is because it's not a democracy. It's not everybody has a say. Not all voices are equal. No, only really good things get here. So people say, you're so into open culture, you're so into free culture. And I say, no, but it all needs to be really tamed and modified by a gatekeeper, I think. This is why the web, archive.org, there are wonderful things on archive.org. Somebody should go in there and organize and pull out the best things, because you're never going to find them. It's a mess.
No, I think it is very true, and I think you hit on something, that the idea of the curator, that buzzword, what we hear from everywhere, will be more and more important. I think why Ubu, in its beauty and simplicity, actually, with the Beckett and the visual concrete poetry, yet I think also in itself, I sometimes think it's a living, digital, visual, concrete, abstract poem in itself, a universe of stars. But I think that what you said is that we know when we go on it, you or someone at least has looked at it, yeah, that belongs there. And this is, I think, it's perhaps solving one of the big problems, that so much is available now, but we don't really know. We can't see it all. We don't know it anymore. That there has to be some kind of a way or a filter to.
I think so. I think that's that's the job now, right? At a moment where everything is available, it's how do you organize and make sense of it? That you have something like Boing Boing. I mean, Boing Boing is amazing. The #1 blog on the web. They don't create a thing. All they do is point to cool things. That's why they're so good. And actually, the fact of being pointed to by Boing Boing far outweighs the thing that they're pointing at. You see, that's how powerful that gesture is.
It's like the hand that points at the moon becomes more important than the moon itself.
Absolutely. And but it's very funny. I mean, in terms of simplicity, I mean, this look of the site has not changed over the years. I'm a modernist. I don't believe in illusionistic space on the web. I can't stand when, like when folders, when the Mac interface, the folders got dimensional and they got a shadow on that. The modernist in me absolutely cringes. I mean, the whole thing is, I'm really interested because of the concrete poetry and the aesthetic from which, I come. I wanted everything flat. And also, when this was made, the web was a really ugly, cluttered place. And I wanted to actually take the radical idea of actually putting out free space, space that was white, kind of white space. But Beckett is also very funny. I was in China doing a conference last fall, and I was so pleased that that UbuWeb was available in China. I mean, because God knows it's got social, political, sexual content that they would hate. But I think, they came to the homepage and they see an old man, and they go, "Oh, this is a site, a site for geriatric people. It's fine, AARP or something like that." Which is really wonderful. I mean, so much of the web is sexy and youth-driven, and all that shit. And I love the idea that we have a beautiful, older man on the site. So it tries to throw what the web's about off in different ways.
I know in your other life, next to university or running UbuWeb, you are a performer. You perform poetry also. You're your own one. Do you see this as is it a performance piece, actually, that we said this is a poem of mine that I share with the world? Or do you say, actually, this is an archive that I'm putting up for myself, but also for others?
Well, I had to do a book for Documenta this summer, and in it, they asked me the same question, but they wanted me to admit that it was an artwork, which I don't know. I mean, I think that if I say this is an artwork, then it becomes a nasty vanity project instead of community service, right? This is my artwork. Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, I'm interested in, it is. I don't actually. I try to bury myself as much as possible. I mean, I have peers. There's nobody else there, so I appear once in a while. So I don't know. I don't really like that. And I mean, they wanted me, and they're very pushy, Documenta, and they say, so I said. I said, okay, we can play with the idea that in the 20th century, appropriation happened on the scale of the object, and in the digital age, appropriation happens on the scale of the oeuvre. Okay, the database is the new metric for poetry now. Used to be the line or the sonnet, the line, the paragraph, depending on if you ask Gertrude Stein or Pound, it's a different metric. But I think now in the digital age, the metric for poetry is the database. So there's all this, it's a similar ethos that infuses it, I think, and also about managing information as well. So I don't know. I think it's a little precious I don't really think of it as that. I don't know. I don't think it's a very good artwork then. I really don't. I think it's a great community service. It's my way of paying back the world. How's that?
Well, some people do argue that in a couple of 100 years from now, people will look at construction of databases, actually as the matrix, as an artwork, or how it was done, reflecting actually, thinking of people who lived during their time and how they saw the world and how they reflected in it. I know in one of your pieces in there, you said you're kind of surprised that that idea hasn't been taken up from other, sources, like maybe in architecture or film of that. It is kind of as far as I know, a very unique project and one.
Yeah, you can't do it. I mean, it's why should it? I got to tell you, it's pretty crappy. Look, I'm a poet. I shouldn't be doing this. Art history. MoMA should be doing this. Why should I be doing this?
It is.
It's ridiculous. But this is where the artist thing comes into it, because artists don't ask permission. Artists just do it. So there's a need. Every artist has had the way artists work. A book needs to be written. I'll write that book. That painting needs to be painted. I'll paint that painting. You don't ask anybody's permission. You just do it. Okay? And so I had this funny thought that if MoMA had to create this UbuWeb today, it would cost them, untold hundreds of millions of dollars to do this. I mean, just the permissions alone, right? They'd need a massive legal department and say, I want to use a film of yours. Well, now I've got to go to not only find the filmmaker, but I've got to find the distributor, the producer, the gallery, and now our lawyers have to meet. We have to draw up contracts. Somehow, maybe a little payment system has to be made. Oh, and by the way, I use an image of Coca-Cola in the film. We've got to now, or a little snippet of a Beatles song, God forbid, Rolling Stones. Now we've got to go clear the permissions for that. And just one artwork, and this is why MoMA doesn't have anything on their website except for a menu, what they're having in the cafe, and the film that's showing that evening, is because just to put one fucking artwork up on the web for MoMA is probably thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of correspondence. And imagine having to do that for, you saw the film list. I don't even know what's on Ubu, but it's ridiculous. So you could do it, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, because also MoMA has money, and damn right people would want money from them, right? Penn's got, when our teacher got money, you've got money, people want, they're going to go after, they can't do it. They assume there's money, hey, I should be paid. And if you were to give me $1 million for this website today, and I was to take $1 million, I would be obliged to pay everybody out. It would only be fair, right? And so I say, no, I don't touch money. This thing runs for $50 a month. And that's the money I pay my ISP for just the HTML there. And that is it. I mean, it runs for absolutely nothing.
This is just incredible.
It's insane. So that's what, there should be many more of these. The taxonomies are very bad. Also, if you go into Ubu and you go into a film thing, and there's a filmmaker's made 70 films, and why are there only 14 of them there? Oh, well, those are the ones that happen to be floating around file sharing. That's it. There's no real good reason for it. It's poorly done. It should be done much better. It should. And I can't wait till that happens, and then I can retire the site. But put it out of its misery, The copies are awful. The resolution is bad on the site. And I like that. It should be bad, because I believe in good distribution for artist videos and stuff. I did a funny thing a couple of years ago. The Walter Reed Theater invited UbuWeb to do a night, right, at Walter Reed. And, so the most important, screen in New York City, it's the size of a building, and very fancy. I said, yeah, it's okay, but you have to show AVIs from the site. You may not. They said, no, we're going to go get the good copies from the. I said, no, actually, not for this time. You're going to show the AVIs. And they showed the AVIs, and it was the worst 2 hours of cinema you've ever seen. Each pixel was the size of this thing. I mean, it was awful. And the point was, and I said this afterwards for the 3 people that happened to be still there, I said the point is that that everybody says, oh, UbuWeb is really killing our genre. The filmmakers, my God, they're up in arms. And I'm like, no, actually not. This is not cinema. This is a shitty AVI, and if you're going to tell me that a 2-inch screen like that is actually going to kill your entire experience in your entire genre, then that's not my problem. Actually, that's your problem. You've got to somehow deal with that. What can I do? So it was. I believe in good distribution. I believe in good resolution, and that is not what I'm about. Again, I'm about the photograph of the painting, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I do know that professors or even students here who teach have a hard time finding material to screen. I know you have Pina Bausch up there. You have some work from Wilson, Alexander Kluge, filmmakers or others. Stuff you can't find. They are so thrilled that they are something they can show and can use. So since we are more on the side of theater, I remember once you said, "So what are you doing? Theater?" And I said, "Yes." And you were a bit surprised, if I remember right. So from your point of view as a collector, as a flaneur of the digital world, where you have your own museum or your own collections, where do you see theater in this whole UbuWeb universe?
Well, I'd love to have a theater thing. I worked with Mac Wellman's students for a long time, some who went on to become very famous, this was a long time ago, very famous people in theater. And I said, hey, let's make a theater section, man, And, for some reason, it never really happened. I mean, it was a million years ago. But we did the same thing just recently. I just opened up this UbuWeb dance section. This is something I've wanted to do for a million years as well. And we just opened this up, and there's about 60 or 70 artists here, and there's probably a few hundred films. And I found this guy. He's got a blog called the Dance Database blog, and he just somehow has access to all these DVDs and odd stuff. And I said, well, why don't you just curate it and start throwing things up there? And I think we've got a very beautiful little section coming here. I'm really, really excited. It's been a dream of mine to do a dance section. We've always had Merce Cunningham and, all that kind of avant-garde crossover stuff, but now we've actually got, real dancers. So a theater would be fantastic, I mean, why not? I don't know. Why isn't there one?
It is true. I think it comes, to rights. And Rutledge is now thinking about creating a digital database, but you have to subscribe.
Yeah,
and
right.
They will have to make contracts and all this, but it's not really working out. But I also meant to my question.
Clearly, it's not.
How will this? They might find a model. I mean, it's still new. You were, as they say, in the sense of the avant-garde. You were just very early and found a working model actually. But do you feel that contemporary theater, is that still part of that universe, or do you think it's something separate?
Totally. No, I mean, I don't put anything outside of it. Clearly, my taste is so Catholic as to what avant-garde is. I mean, there is some theater stuff in there. But it would be the same kind of equivalence. There's Beckett, there's Richard Foreman. The kind of stuff that edges into the art world and deals with those sort of crossover things. But sure, straight theater. I mean, I don't know. Where do you draw the line, though? It had to be something kind of experimental. I remember I once had also, this is also the funny balance that you play on Ubu. I once had a bunch of BBC Pinter plays up on Ubu. And I got a takedown from BBC. And I don't want to mess with the BBC legal department. That's one people I don't want to tangle with, so I took them down. And yet the BBC lets me keep up Beckett. Pinter, no. Beckett, yes. Well, I don't know. It must have some sort of economic, when I always love when things go a little bit, the water rises a little too high. Things are a little bit too high, then you have to, there's some people that can sit below the surface, and then, Glenn Gould, I had wonderful Glenn Gould radio plays up. Really, they're long out of print. All these Hirschspiels that he had done, hours of them, and they were very rare and they were very good. But finally, after being up for about 5 or 6 years, the CBC finally pulled the plug on those. So that, but why? I mean, it's not not Goldberg variations. It's weird, difficult radio things that are out of print. Again, I don't want to tangle with the CBC. You gotta know where to pick your fight. Some of them I win, some of them I don't.
When you have your glass of whiskey in your hand, and that is it.
Well, I spend a lot of time doing this. I mean, it's kind of wonderful. I just kind of should show you one. I have just one great thing to show you. This is the kind of fights that I get into. I've gotten very good. I've given myself a PhD in law over the years, and Ubu's never been sued. But I got this amazing email one back a while ago. Here it is. This is from the Andrew Wiley Agency, the most powerful literary agency in the universe, who sent this scary DMCA takedown. I write you from the Wiley Agency as the authorized representative of rights for William S. Burroughs. Several works to which the estate of William S. Burroughs holds exclusive rights are being violated by material available on UbuWeb at the following. Now watch this. Okay? And, you know, things like Furious Pig. But you don't know who Furious Pig is, but they were a punk Ket Jack sound poetry group. Oh, listen to that. Now, released on Rough Trade. Now, I don't think these are Burroughs covers. If I go Burroughs. Oh, there it is. Let's see what they got on me. Let's see what they got here. Oh, this is what they own this. Absolutely fabulous on TV. We scored a live soundtrack to a William Burroughs book, The Wild Boys. Our session, but I don't have that live soundtrack. This is from an interview with them, right? So this is just amazing to me, is that they're claiming copyright on that, you know, on things like that. And basically what they've done is they've gone through the entire site, and anywhere there's a mention of the name William Burroughs, or even Burroughs, right? They say, no, we own that, take that fucking down, right? And this is my very favorite thing. She says, please note that these works are protected by copyright, okay? And under penalty of perjury. In the state of law, I state that the information contained here is accurate and that I am authorized to act on behalf of the exclusive rights holders for this material in question. Already she's perjured herself. Already she's lied 1,000 times. You see, and this is copyright intimidation. This is why blogs disappear. We have to make an upload after all that bullshit. People get scared of letters like this. Well, now I wrote her back, and I said, I think I probably even have the response here. I said, please note that these works are protected by copyright. And I said, but we believe that they are as well, but many copyrights are not yours, and therefore you have no claim on them. And, you know, under penalty of law of perjury, I say, look, under penalty of law, then this information is not at all accurate. And I say, while UbuWeb is happy to correct the violations that are actually yours, the cutting and pasting of an internet search based on the name of William S. Burroughs and claiming that anything on the site with your name is yours is not helpful in achieving that goal. It's all, you know. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then she writes me back, and, you know, she's, oh, I'm really sorry, you know. I was just, and she's, clearly she's an intern from a college, and, you know, and she said, I'm sorry, Mr. Goldsmith, I was just acting, you know. And I was like, you know, this is just wrong. And so then she comes back with another DMCA takedown a few days later that she considers to be proper. And that's all wrong, too. Because the copyright on a lot of the stuff doesn't belong to Burroughs. She's claiming Burroughs films, which are not in the estate of Burroughs. They're Anthony Bell copyright, and, you know, John Giorno holds most of the copyright to the audio stuff, you know, and it's wrong again. Finally, you know, we go back and forth, and I just, yes, basically you don't have a leg to stand on. Go away. This is not, you really don't own anything on the site. And they went away. And several years later, we still have this material up there. So I just want to say that people use copyright in a weird way. You know, it's really idiosyncratic, and people use it as a way to scare people. It's a crowbar for intimidation. And this is why everybody gets so freaked out about it, the potential of that. Most of the time, it's wrong. And when it is right, say it was, and they wanted the work down, I'd go back to them and say, well, okay, look, I get it, you want it down, but no, we're not, this is really educational, you know, please, can we keep it up? May we have your permission to keep it up? Oh, really, you're not selling it? Oh, really, this is in our best interest to have this work up here. It's out of print, nobody's making any money. Please, be our guest, and that often happens. Oh, it's a lot of work. And so what I did, I'm sorry, I'm just going to finish this. What I did finally was, because I mean, it really is too much work. I've got kids, I've got a job, I've got all sorts of things going on. I took Ubu off of Google. So now if you go to Google, and look for Burroughs, and if you look for Burroughs, you won't find the UbuWeb stuff on Google. And that's really, really been good, because a lot of people, they have Google alerts, and they just see something, and then bang, a letter comes, and you got to go back and forth and back and forth. So now, people write books on how to get your ranking higher on Google. I'm trying to get lower. I'm trying to disappear from Google.
So you're trying to be a digital gourmet shop for people who know where to go.
Well, that's where the avant-garde's always been, hasn't it? The underground.
But you did raise the question, of the access of information to the internet or the art, and some people do argue it has been for a while very free. Everything was open, but even Google changed. And where do you see this work going? Where do you see UbuWeb in 10, 20 years? Or?
Oh, I don't see it in 10 or 20 years. I mean, like I said, I'd love to see it. I'd like to see somebody do it better. I'll keep going. It's risky, sometimes I dread looking at my inbox for another fight. I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised it's been around this long. Really, we can imagine it go on for. I mean, I'm 17 years into this. 20 years. The Beatles weren't around 20 years. I mean, the Rolling Stones, I guess, are still around as we found out today. They're still 50 years, so, But, this kind of, I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. Hey, should we take a question or two?
We take some questions. I mean, I think it's an incredible source of inspiration, I think, from around the world, that we could get the lights up for the audience. And we have some questions, yes.
This may be a very simple-minded question from a somewhat technophobically inclined person, but how do you find the material? Because I've been doing this so long, I'm privy to many private file sharing groups. I mean, freaks, people that really put up everything. And, they must spend their life ripping these things the way I spend. I'm like Robin Hood. I take from the very closed and open it up and give it away to everybody. So I have access to these things, and it started with I'm a collector. I've got a big, large collection, and so they're around, but they're really hard to find. And you can catch a 10-minute buzz on YouTube of something, but I've got 6 or 7 hour films up on the site. Fantastic. My favorite one is a film of a cooking show that's filmed in real time. So, in cooking shows, and this is an avant-garde piece. In cooking shows, they turn the water on, and the soup boils, and cut to the emptying the soup out of the container. This one actually stays on the pot till it boils, and it takes hours for this big thing to boil, and then it keeps going, and you just watching this thing boil. So there's Warhol sleeping.
It is, and so those are the things you don't find on YouTube.
If I may just follow up one more question. The name Ubu obviously is UbuRoi, inspired by UbuRoi. And so I wanted to hear a little bit how you came up with that connection.
Well, for many years, it was a pataphysical joke that there would be no Jarry on UbuWeb. And it wasn't for many, many years. And finally, I came across a really beautiful French production of UbuRoi, really nice. Animated thing. It's so beautiful. You should look at it, because I'm about to take it down, because the French want me to take that one down. So it may go back to the pataphysical thing. Also, I have recordings of Jarry singing, and I also have lectures of people speaking about Jarry. So finally, I said, joke's over. And so there is quite a bit of Jarry on the site now. But those are, how do you get it? It's a good question. I'm sorry. It should be obvious, yeah.
I'm curious to know, how do you work with your students on writing and those ideas of sharing and the ideas of creation and sharing that are implied on the website project?
Yeah, students know everything, digital. They know much more than I do. What they don't know is context. They have absolutely no frame of reference. They have no history. They don't know where things fit in, what things relate to. So I think today, the professor's job is to take a meme, say
say, the Hitler bunker meme from Downfall. Of course, everybody knows that. And actually connect it to Rene Vianney's Situationist films, where he re-subtitles films. Say, oh no, actually that's not just a meme, but there's a long tradition that goes back into the 20th century avant-garde of people re-subtitling films to detourn them, so to speak. So I think there's a great, but then I say that, but then I love when the materials on Ubu are misused, because I say, oh, I'm providing a great context, a historical context for this, but what happens is that a lot of the materials on Ubu are used by people making dance mixes, and they go, hey, there's this site with all this weird shit, this really weird sound on it. Check it out. And so you find little bits of Bruce Nauman being mixed into dance tunes, on dance floors in Sao Paulo, get out of my life, boom, 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 boom. So I'm actually sort of, in a way, I want to teach my students to use it properly. In another way, I love the misuses of the site.
I have a question about lawyers. The intellectual pursuit lawyers, are those the people running after you? What do they do? Is this what they do? They just go after whatever they can get and get money for?
Absolutely.
That's really what they do? I
Sure.
never knew what they did.
Sure, that's what they do. And sometimes it works, but then there's been recent cases of ambulance chasing, copyright ambulance chasing, that has been ruled unconstitutional. Things that are clearly in the public domain that people are claiming and then making settlements out of court for. Most of the stuff, there's so much stuff that's out of print. And corporations are more than happy to claim that stuff that's out of print. For example, HarperCollins bought the name to a small spoken word record label called Cadman Records. They used to put out all sorts of cool Dylan Thomas things. But they bought the name, but they didn't buy the rights to it, right? But meanwhile, somebody wants to make an academic paper with a Dylan Thomas poem quoting the Cadman Records. They do a search and they realize that HarperCollins, like somebody scooping up expired domain names, has bought the name to the Cadman Records. So they write to HarperCollins and say, may we have permission to republish some of this Dylan Thomas from your LP? And HarperCollins says, yes, but it will cost you $300 in permissions. Absolutely. And so they're actually making all this money, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars annually on material that they don't own. This is nefarious to me.
I never knew what they did. And I said, this specialty of law didn't exist when I was younger. So thank you for explaining it.
Yeah, it's really low.
What is interesting, but speaking of recordings, what is interesting how well sound survives, right? Through time compared to also to images. Or I feel it's quite one of the strongest parts of UbuWeb actually are the sound archives. Not just because it might be easier to put. I also feel they really do transport.
Well, they're lean and they're sort of open. I mean, MP3 is actually owned by a corporation, but not really. And they're not, they don't appear, as opposed to, I've made some bad mistakes on Ubu. One of my big mistakes was streaming everything in Flash. Now you can't see everything on the iPad or on the iPod, on Ubu. I've got to now go and change everything, 3,000 films to HTML5 if I want people to be able to access Ubu on that. So this was a problem of going with a proprietary corporate format who corporations got into a tangle and Apple said, no, we're not going to support Adobe. And that was the end of Flash on the iPhone. I feel very badly about that. And I think that was a bad mistake. I should have gone with open source. And I think Apple's right. Apple's saying, no, the film and streaming should be an open source thing. It shouldn't be owned by you. He was right. I was wrong, actually, oddly enough. So I think that sound is leaner and meaner. Also, codecs on AVIs are disastrous. Technology is really, really changing on in terms of delivery and film. So MP3 is like early HTML. Yeah, I've made some mistakes. I have to correct that. I feel very bad about that. All right. Yeah.
I have a question and a gift. The question is, are there some things that you've been hunting for, Moby Dick-like, for since the beginning? Some things you've never been able to find that you'd love to have?
Yeah, what's the gift?
And is
What's the gift? You have one of them?
Yeah. I have, yes. I brought something for you. I've been meaning to give you for about 17 years. It's actually a piece that I made that uses Transformers 2 remade with Marinetti's, all the text is from Marinetti's Futurist Manifesto and Futurist Cinema. All the images is from Transformers 2, and it was taken down from YouTube, and so I've been trying to get a copy of it to Michael Bay because the guy that I edited it with, one of his coworkers used to date Michael Bay in high school, so I've been trying to get him a copy of it, but I would love to give you a copy of it.
Yeah. Oh, great. Like great YouTube, great democracy. Yeah. No, it's not. It's owned, and it's policed, and it's pirated, and there's algorithms that pick up something that has a copyright on it is garbage. It's trash. Facebook, it's all owned. The whole Web 2.0 is owned by corporations and you dangle the thing called free in front of everybody and they snap at it, really taking the bait for free, and the whole web gets owned in the same way that this film really, and Ubu really goes against that. I can't stand when that kind of thing happens, and it happens all the time. The one thing that I've been looking for that I have not been able to find is a complete recording of Yves Klein's monotone symphony, which is one note played by an orchestra out for 30 minutes. And he, dragged the girls around on the canvases to that soundtrack. That's the one thing. And the other thing I really want to find is the Robert Mapplethorpe film of him. There was one film that he made of him getting his nipple pierced.
That film was Sandy. That film. I mean, I see her around, the woman who made that film, and she's shown it at Anthology. I mean, if you can find it or you don't know how to access her.
I haven't been able to get my hands on it, but I'd really like it.
Okay, because I think I could put you in touch with her to find out about that. And the Klein thing, isn't that the soundtrack for the performance that we see, or do you not have that?
There was actually a record released of it. I really love a LP
because I've seen the performance of it. Maybe that's cut out.
Yeah, I have the films of it, but I'd love. So that's my two wish lists, if anybody. See, a lot of the stuff comes to me through friends and people that have this stuff. They say, like you. So, I've got something great for you. This would be fantastic. An unknown, a person who works here who is unnamed, gave me her entire DVD collection of very rare, very wildly rare art things. I spent a week converting all this stuff. It was about 200 films. It just went up. So that's a lovely way that the site grows. But again, it's got to be vetted, it's got to be good. All right.
Good. So maybe one last question, and then...
First, just to say how much I appreciate this website, and I had the chance to also use it in the classes that I teach at Baruch College, and so I really appreciate what you do, and well, of course, it's a great source of material of all sorts. And also, I'm not sure I understood what you said about the email that you got. Apparently, the person who emailed you about and was complaining about the copyrighted material, apparently, was the person who actually did not own.
Yeah, but it was a very powerful literary agency that represents the estate of William S. Burroughs. The Andrew Wiley Agency.
Yeah, I think they do take a shotgun approach. Everything that somehow comes up.
So what was their? What was what was the reason for actually emailing?
I don't know. It's a good question. They're just trolling. People want the illusion of control over their material. And hey, like Lady Gaga, she has a right to protect that multi-gazillion-dollar industry. I'm not putting up copies of Naked Lunch. I don't put up anything that's in print. I'm not interested in that. I like legitimate economies. I don't mind paying for things that, people are going to make money on. This stuff never made money, most likely never will. It's very important. It's very valuable in other ways. So I actually, copyright and economies are really nuanced things, They're really, really different. Sometimes org.org, and most people know org, which is the UbuWeb of theory.
I mean, I don't like that they put up things that are in print. You know, they put up things that are in print. I'm kind of copyleft, and I said this to actually somebody at Verso the other day who said to me, you know, actually, you're being a little too conservative. We found that pirating digital copies of our books don't hurt our sales, and we're not worried about it, even the stuff that's in print. People that are going to buy the books are going to buy the books. So, I mean, here I am being a little bit, you know, copyright. I'm like, no. And they're saying, no, you should chill out a little bit. So, you know, I don't know. UbuWeb wants to be friends to artists, you know, and I've gotten into big fights with people on the frameworks list, my dear friends on the frameworks list who hate me. You know, I mean, I said, oh, guys, you know, do it yourself. Do it better, framework people. You know, you hate UbuWeb. You hate everything about it. You know everything much more than I do. I know nothing about avant-garde film. You should do it, and you should do it better.
But the fact that it was the William Burroughs material makes the whole thing even more ridiculous. And on top of it, the whole copyright, I mean, a major part related to the copyright issues is purely counterintuitive. And unless you know a lot of stuff that belongs to law and how things are legally regulated and stuff like that, it just doesn't feel right. And I mean, it would be logical to assume that a lot of these things should be and could be used the way they are, than the other way around. And the thing which makes it even more absurd is that those who claim copyrights are certainly not obscure punk rock bands, but people who make a lot of money out of copyrights anyway. Yeah. So that's kind of...
Yeah, no, the whole thing is really wrong, and they went away finally. You know, William S. Burroughs, and I think I wrote this finally, I said, please tell James Grauholtz, the executor of the Burroughs estate, who's a good guy. I said, William said, poetry wants to be free. This was William's, you know, I mean, I can quote Burroughs chapter and verse on his ethos toward free culture. Come on, you know, don't start this now. I can get very Lenny Bruce about this, like my legal case, and I'll spare you. So thank you.
I think this is a good poetry wants to be free. Again, thank you so much for coming. We're going to have a little reception here in the room and share a glass of wine, but thank you for coming. Really, thank you.